Just to the east of St Mary's Church and Churchyard, there's a little green area. It's an informal park with some shrubs, trees, grass and gates that are locked open every day. They're locked shut every night. Used to be 2 years ago that you could shut the gate so that if you did have a dog, you'd feel safe that it could run around here and enjoy itself with other dogs. It doesn't happen anymore. This path sort of slopes up to a central seating area, and there are shrubs all around, but they're not what you'd call brilliantly kept. They're sort of hacked back in the autumn and probably in the spring as well, but you notice in here that there are branches growing through it. That looks like an ash tree. That still has leaves on it. It's a bramble. And these things have flowers in the late summer and berries in the autumn, which, you know, would feed the birds, except when these are trimmed off, there is very little that the berries can do about it. A little bit of fungus on one of the fallen branches from these trees, which have sometimes very wicked spines. You can see they're growing off the trunk, presumably to stop animals grazing, but there's no animals here. These are called gladitzias, and they have these long sort of pea pods. They're also called honey locust because the insides, the pod contents, are very sweet. I think it's a North American tree, and oh look, it's a rose that happens to be surviving, but there's a sycamore growing in the middle of this. Soon this will all be a thicket. It's an ash tree. Another sycamore. There's ivy that's grown up these in times past that's been killed off. The shrubs at the border all have not been cut back hard this autumn. There's a lot of growth on this. This will be an oleander. And these shrubs that have been cut down low with their attendant ash saplings and brambles. Don't exactly look very enticing. Plenty of litter here. It's a hard job for one man in the morning with several parks to actually do, but there's the remains of somebody's tent there. I can see a tent pole and presumably the cover, so rough sleepers use this, and they crap in the woods of course as well, because what do you do when there are no public toilets open and you're living rough? More shrubs. I mean, these shrubs should be probably about 5 or 6 feet tall, but they're just hacked back down to ground cover, really. I suppose it's easier to maintain the grounds that way. But there is plenty of leaf litter here, which is surprising. Usually over the past couple of years this leaf litter has all been gone. It's another area where you get fly tipping, and it's not just humans doing this. The local crows, foxes and other wildlife actually drag stuff from, this is a little area where the bins for these flats are. So a lot of this, oh look, I missed it, it's a dead rat. So not all the stuff here is very nice to eat, I'd imagine. Piece of plastic waste, plastic bag. Parts of a fan. A bottle. And more shrubs with saplings growing through them. It's a story all around here that anything that's got winged seeds like ash and sycamore can actually blow into the woods. Anything that birds drop like bramble seeds from blackberries grows here. Here's a rather deformed ash branch and loads more sycamore saplings growing within there. There's a rose that's bravely hanging on, getting smothered by honeysuckle. More saplings growing through the laurels at the back of the thing, and ivy clambering up a dwarfed cherry, I guess. Don't get me wrong, the ivy is a great place for little birds to actually nest in, secure from the magpies and the other predatory birds around here. But it's all becoming a woodland, which is fitting for the name, but that's not its original purpose. It's an informal garden, not a woodland with a clearing with grass in the middle. Here's another tree that used to have ivy growing up it, and I saw that in, I think it was May of 2019, this ivy was growing. There was a young fledgling family of wrens in here, and the workmen came from the council and they cut back the ivy. Now this isn't exactly a huge tree. About 5 days after the ivy had been cut, I saw the family of wrens fledging on the sort of dying vines from the ivy, and now, you know, it's just a desolate looking tree. It's not a huge tree, you know, it's possibly between 15 and 20 foot high. Most of that is actually low growth. There There are more ash trees growing out of these bushes here, and no doubt sometime in the new year they will be just trimmed back with electric hedge trimmers, together with the brambles that are also growing through. So it's not exactly a well maintained area. Here's presumably an old tree trunk which is still alive and still cut back on a regular basis. You know, this is perhaps a couple of years growth, I don't know. My dog's eating the cleavers, goosegrass. Dogs I've had seem to find it rather enjoyable, and then they vomit it up. Here's the other gate. There are only two entrances to this park, and you see this one too is locked in an open position, so that people really don't feel safe exercising their dogs here in the open. Hello, Mishka. Mishka. Paul. Give me Paul. Give me Paul. Look, there's more hackback bushes. It's been like this for over 2 years. It's never recovered from the hacking back that it has had. Local people throw their waste food here, usually on the grass, and to be honest, I don't want my dog vomiting at home, so I would throw it onto the bushes and let the crows eat it rather than the rats that we've just seen. There's more tree growth through these shrubs, which are actually greener than I've seen them for a long time. Perhaps COVID has actually given this place a bit of a respite. Here's another tree with ivy cut back, and there's another tree that's almost all ivy. The guys didn't manage to get to that with their trimmers, so it's not very consistent. Notice the advancing saplings here. You know, they're sort of 8-9 foot high in places, and they're all through. Eventually there won't be any shrubs and there will just be trees, which I suppose is a solution. You won't need any ground maintenance to actually look after the trees until they get too big and they start falling over, dropping branches on people. Another area which is fly tipped on a regular basis. These things have been here for at least a couple of months. There's more stuff down there. It's not looked after. It's not maintained. And it's not inspected. These are robinias. Some things actually manage to nest in here, and it's quite a pleasant leafy place. Come on. Come. Come. Mishka. Come. Come. More trees growing through the shrubs. Beneath this bush there's a stand of Japanese knotweed. It's been there for years. It gets trimmed back, but I don't think it has ever been eradicated, which it should be, being on council property. Maybe they have eradicated it, I don't know. Other trees are really taking over here. It's an elder, more ash. And this is the stone yard, where a lot of the old headstones from the graves over there have gone. So, this is Woodland. Just return back to the western exit. There are nice horse mushrooms that grow around this maple at certain times of the year. When it's warm and we've had some rain, you don't often get both that sort of weather in Portsmouth. It seems to be long droughts and then a lot of wet weather all at once. People break their dog throwing toy, drop their dog poop bags, but they don't pick them up and throw them away. That would be too much like hard work to walk the 20 yards to the nearest litter bin. They leave it for somebody else to pick up. So these seats generally face towards the south and west, and these seats are most of the year, when the sun is in the sky, it's obscured through the trees, but it's still a pleasant place. You can see a pigeon, you can hear a crow, you can see some of the rather vicious spines from the gladitzias, which most of these lower branches are where the spines are, and many of them are dead. And I requested that the ground maintenance people actually prune them back a couple of years ago, and they did. They didn't prune back everything. They certainly didn't prune back all the dead wood, but certainly most of the spiny stuff is gone. Again, this has become a bed of brambles. Little Unanimous is getting choked, and these plants with still purple berries have none. Another dying bed, more trees unplanted. This is something, for some reason in Christmas 2019 they decided to plant this little area up with little shrubs, because nobody came back and looked after them or watered them, and it's still the area that the dogs that are used to exercising in here with sort of particular habits. This is made by a collie, this run, because this is the path the collie always takes. Collies are creatures of habit, and of course they take that path on the outrun, but they run back straight through here. This was returfed back in 2019, just before Christmas, and it looked pretty much like this before they returfed it. There's a patch here that they also returfed, and that has all been worn away. If they'd have decided to put a couple of bigger shrubs in here instead of putting a dozen little foot-high boxes or whatever they were, they might have had a chance to stop the dogs actually trampling everything. But more wasted money from the council. Depressing. Right, let's finish. Walk back to the churchyard. Past the gates, locked over. Well, I can't let my dog off in here. The woman can't come in here because she can see I've got a dog. So, never mind. Woodlands Rose. And St Mary's Churchyard. This is an interesting thing. The church, with its knapped flint facings, took 2 years to build. This repair to the wall, which I guess is contemporaneous with the church, took 6 months to repair. Just this little bulge, and look what they've left. There's obviously a case of heave by the roots of the trees that caused the wall to fracture and fall down in the first place. So the tree is still leaning, and it has a huge limb hanging over. In fact, the bulk of the tree is in that limb, and one day it will just break off. It's a sycamore, I think, probably the parent of most of those seedlings over there. And okay, Mishka, up, come on, you can do it. Up, good boy. Show you an area here that is in need of attention. I've seen council workmen in here this morning, I think, looking over at the site. They didn't stay very long. I made a report yesterday about the state of the paths in here. This is a conservation area. The trees are all listed, church is listed, and that little green is part of the area as well. It's got some good old trees here. This is a poplar, This one is a female. That's a cherry tree. There are maples and another sycamore. A couple of male poplars at the end. And this strange thing. I really don't know what you'd call this. It's a monument to something, but it has no inscription. There's no indication of what its purpose is or anything, no plaque. It's just a cylinder of pink granite, hewn at some cost, no doubt. Single piece, dome top, looks like a discarded hot water tank. You often find insects and spiders and ants on its surface because when the sun's shining it actually retains the heat for quite a time. Now as we go over here we notice evidence of vehicles. Used to be little flint walls here, still are fragments of them, but that's not tall enough to stop the. This is actually a council truck that came down here. I think it reversed, or it went up there, reversed, and came back. This is the mess from the parking over the weekend. Christmas Day was Saturday, Sunday Boxing Day also had services here, and that little car park at the end isn't enough for the number of worshippers, so they park down here, half on and half off the grassy verge, and it's been wet this end of December, so there's a whole area from there which is sort of the high point that is mud, and the mud has washed down on the tarmac and followed its course through more rutted tracks. Where Christmas car parkers were, and here around the old cenotaph. St Mary's is the parish church of Portsea. It's central point, it's one of the highest points in the city, at the top of the tower, and it's visible for almost anywhere on approach to Portsmouth, on the motorways, and it's just a central landmark that stops you getting lost. And you know that this area here is also muddy and defaced by the tyres of the vehicles parking here. This is a slick of mud. Notice that once upon a time they prevented vehicles from coming up here. No longer. That's all the car parking space there is in front of the church. This area here, a couple of days ago I was in here walking my dog and I inadvertently stepped around here and my foot just went beneath me. I went over and fell on my side, bruised my ribs. Not a very pleasant experience. The church is about 120 odd years old, 130 years. You'll see in a moment, there's a plaque stone was laid by Crown Princess of Germany, Princess Royal, on August the 9th, 1887. And a magnificent perpendicular building it is too. It has a working clock, which is visible to the west, to the north and to the south, but not to the east over the body of the church. And the area is generally not badly maintained. There was more in the way of shrubs around here in the past, but they've been mercilessly hacked back. There was a flower bed, not a flower bed, a bed of shrubs over there with ceanothus in there, but they are now all grubbed up and there's just that single one small tree remaining. A couple of magnificent blue cedars, and there is a sycamore here, which I think is beloved of the woodpeckers. Mishka, come on, walk with me, come. You can tell it's got woodpecker holes in it up there. Probably can't see it very well, but the two top beams are completely dead because they've rotted through, and it's still got some bunches of seeds waiting to drop. And there is a man-made track across the grass from the northeast going down to the gate in the southwest. So why they don't pave this area as well, save it being a muddy track, I don't know. There are two memorials here, something to do with, I imagine, sailors being lost, I think. There is I thought there was a carving on them of an anchor, but they're both sort of separate from their base. The pedestals get pushed over every so often, and then they get pushed back but never repaired. There used to be some sort of iron embedded in the stone here that went up. I don't know what that would have looked like. I presume the iron was taken when the railings around the church were taken for the Second World War effort to make more tanks and guns. Everywhere you see evidence of where the trees are damaged at their bases by the ground maintenance people, who obviously bring their rather large mowers to cut the grass. And this particular I think a sycamore again has just a little bit of trunk living still. The rest of it is dead and will rot, and because of the slope of the tree it will fall across the path and have to be cut down. They could save it now, they could take down the waves at the top and pollard it. It would make some regrowth. Probably get the crown, give it an extra 40 or 50 years of life. But there doesn't seem to be any skills involved in ground maintenance in the Portsmouth Parks Department, who are charged with maintaining this ground. An interesting weeping ash there. A huge London plane. There's the two elms. I don't know which race of elm they are. They're not suffering from Dutch elm disease at all. This London plane is pretty venerable. Predating this church, there was another church that was about half its size, and that had been built at the beginning of the 19th century, I believe, but it proved to be poorly ventilated, I believe, so it was pulled down when this place became prosperous at the end of the 19th century, and this was built presumably with help from grateful parishioners. The nice wooded area across the Fratton Road is where the vicarage used to be situated. It's now the grounds of a funeral director's, and at the end of this terrace is the Carnegie Library. So this is the little green patch in Kingston in the middle of Portsea Island, the St Mary's conservation area, and as such it's the place where I bring my dog, and lots of other people do, because there are no dedicated dog parks in Portsmouth. There are some parks where you can't even take a dog unless it's an assistance dog. That's Victoria Park, and across the university there is another park that belongs to the university called Woodland Park, on which you're not supposed to walk your pets. This is the Fratton Road, and that is also part of the conservation area with the rather nice trees, but being privately owned, they're not maintained to the degree that these are. So that's what this area would probably look like if the trees were allowed to be natural. I mean, there is a lot of ivy, a lot of other growths of shrubs in between the trees. So a little walk around the conservation area in the centre of Portsmouth.